I would like to share with you about my experiences with PTSD from the perspective of a spiritual person who has been working very, very consciously on my psychology, both from a spiritual and a psychological perspective, and really they're married together from the way I approach it. So basically, I'm bringing my intuition together with marrying a sense of, what teachings I've been coming across that have helped me to heal both my psychology and also healing the PTSD. Now, the way I see it, PTSD is it's something that gets wired into the nervous system, into the neurology, and into the nervous system from a current life experience that occurs. And for most people who experience PTSD, often it's what's called complex PTSD, which is trauma which is sustained, like it happens on a daily basis when you experience some kind of trauma every single day. So it just gets so patterned into the nervous system and into the neurology. So, things like childhood abuse, that's just prevalent, and it happens, it can leave a child when they grow up, into adulthood with these patterns of, and when I say abuse, it might not, I'm not saying just sexual, there's also psychological abuse, which, can be really lasting for any individual. So I'll describe my what happened for me. It's not like a story of woe is me, it was really tough what happened to me in the past. But just to give one example, and this is what happened to me and that left me with this patterning of complex post-traumatic stress disorder. So I worked in a school as a teacher of special ed children. They were children with rather severe emotional and behavioral disorders. So, it was a very explosive environment, it was just a very intense environment. So in itself, just working with those kids, with children who were violent, were, incredibly, coming from their own abusive backgrounds sometimes, but, often with, massive psychological mental health issues. It was an incredible environment to work in, very chaotic. Anything could happen, and there was, almost every week there was, it was just not unusual to experience very dangerous situations. So that in itself created a certain pattern. But the more dominant and the lasting pattern that I believe is more what created the PTSD for me, because I was able to sort of rationalize that, these are children, and, it was my job and I was playing a particular role. And, while it wasn't easy, there's a certain level of being able to let it go. But the more damaging psychological abuse came from, there were two principals running the school, and basically they were psychologically abusive, and they were psychologically abusive to children and also to staff that, like myself, who, more the female staff, but, staff who showed any kind of sensitivity. They were very, they would use every psychological abusive tool you can imagine. So at its simplest level, like, something would go wrong, which it went wrong every single day, you know what I mean? Like there was always some explosion, something massive happening. And if you didn't handle it according to the way they believed you should have handled it, or, you made a mistake in their eyes, they wouldn't counsel you through it. You know, there was no debriefing, there was no empathy, there was no, you know, professional guidance to move you forward and, you know, resolve the situation. There was just punishment, you know, there was shame, guilt, punishment, you know, every single time. And if you ever stood up for yourself, which I quite often did, and I stood up for children too in those situations, that then there was added punishment, which generally was like this isolation. I'd get iced out, and mainly the principals would somehow create it so that, you know, none of the other staff would talk to me, and I'd just be, you know, I'd feel so alone. And you know, my way of coping was to just walk out the door and smoke a joint and just forget about it, because it was, you know, just too much to deal with. So that's enough of painting that picture. This happened daily, every single work day, for, you know, from 8 a.m. in the morning until 5 or 6 in the evening. Like, it just was constant, the abuse that was going on there for 14 years. So you can imagine the patterning that went on. So there's many different ways that the PTSD has come out for me. Now, I've experienced the upsurge of trauma from what I'd say is sort of, you know, from psychological patterns that have been unhealed from past lives. So I have experienced that come up, and there's a very distinct difference with actual PTSD episodes. So PTSD episodes come specifically from an event that can trigger this. It's a very visceral experience where there's an event that actually triggers, you know, just some sort of nervous system reaction in the self. And it's quite irrational. It can be, you know, just, no, it could be sort of like seeing something, or, you know, particular, even hearing particular sounds. It really depends. It can, mostly with me, it's been like some sort of an event that just, you know, will jolt, you know, this trauma, a trauma reaction from me, where what happens is I actually go, it just pulls me straight back into that past experience with the actual feelings I was feeling back then. And it just takes a bit of time to process those feelings, you know. It's not a simple like wave a magic wand and it's all resolved. There is a certain period where, you know, it's a bit like a panic attack, but it really depends on what the emotions I was really feeling back in that, you know, past experience. You know, it can be a lot of paralysis too, like, you know, unable to sort of move and process and move forward and make rational decisions. It's a very debilitating experience, a PTSD episode. The more I've worked on my psychology, the easier it is to process these experiences. So it's not as sustained as it used to be. Because I know there's something, I know there's resolution on the other side of this, and I know this is an opportunity to heal something else. I can heal this pattern, you know what I mean? It's not about stopping it. It's not about ignoring it. It is about going right into it. So only a couple of days ago, I did experience a PTSD experience, because I've been working in a professional workplace. This is the first time I have worked in 17 years. You know, that's how severe the workplace experience was for me. And so, you know, since going through training for this job and then, you know, working there, I'm just doing it in a casual capacity. And it does involve teaching children. It's triggered a couple of PTSD experiences, and it generally comes when there's been some kind of issue that, you know, I need to be, you know, something in the way I'm teaching needs to be addressed, you know. And but this, so when I and so the people who run this organization, it's all done professionally, you know what I mean? Like if so, let's say there's a skill or a way that, you know, that I was, you know, something that needs to be improved in the way I was teaching a child, you know, their swimming skills or the approach I was using, whatever it is. The supervisors always just say, okay, can you not do that, but do this, and then do it in that way. And then they listen to, you know, me sort of, you know, what I have to say about that. Like, you know, I ask questions, or, you know, do I do it this way or that way, or is this okay? And they give me feedback, and it's just always just, it's an easy process, you know, it's done professionally. No one holds, there's no guilt, there's no shame, there's none of that, you know, like it's just, it's a professional situation, and it's dealt with in a professional way. So anyway, so the triggers that have happened, you know, like I'm very aware, like, this is coming from the past, you know what I mean? I know it's from the past, but there's not a lot I can actually do about it in the moment that that episode is happening. Like, I'm just aware. And so when this episode happened a couple of days ago, you know, I felt overwhelmed. I was so triggered. I was fearing that, you know, I'd done something wrong, and that I was being punished by my supervisors. And, you know, there was just, you know, I was making up stories in my mind. And I just felt like on that day, I thought, I could have contacted my supervisor and asked for some feedback, but I just felt like, no, go into the pain of this and just go right through it. You know what I mean? Like, get through to the other side. Don't just, because I knew deep down that I was misreading everything, and I knew there wasn't really a problem, but I realized that wasn't going to give me the answer I needed. I knew I needed to go into this. So I went straight into the pain, which means, you know, just feeling awful for 6 hours or so. But then with this faith, I invoked a lot of light with, I invoked light with Australia to cut me free from these past patterns. Invoked a lot of protective light with Archangel Michael. And I just called on the masters, I think Padmasambhava, to I asked Padmasambhava to help me see what I needed to see with this. And then, you know, got to work. And then, you know, just knew when I went to bed that night, I knew, like, I set myself a plan for the next day, which was to just study a teaching, invoke some more light, and then do an exercise to really, you know, rise above the lower self and look into, like, you know, why am I reacting this way? What's going on? What is the belief behind all of this? And what I saw is something, you know, that I've been seeing, and I just know it's another layer of this, is a psychological mechanism that just fears being rejected and judged, and which I'm very aware of, and I know I'm working through this in layers. And really, in this case, as far as PTSD goes, like, I can see that this is, I just know that there may be other moments where, oh yeah, and I was able to actually check in with, you know, because I was feeling rational again, I checked in with my supervisor, and there's no issues, you know, it just confirmed for me that was all made up in my trauma mind. So I just was able to sort of separate, that's the past, that's the PTSD, you know, it's a post-traumatic stress. That's something that happened in the past. My body's just processing this. And then I was able to look at the present. So the past was in an abusive environment that was not run in a professional way at all. The present, I know 100% I'm in a professional environment. There are channels to go through, and this, it's not like that. And I know I'm a professional also, the way I approach my job. So so it's about taking about all these irrational fears, doubting myself and doubting, you know, the present environment, and realizing, you know, there's nothing I have to change there. Like, if If it was an unprofessional environment, then I would know to move on, but I know it's not. So I know it's about staying there and just recognizing these trauma patterns. So I'm okay with whether there's another episode, but I know I have this clear awareness now where I'll be able to I should be able to transcend it a lot faster. I don't know until it happens, but it's just, there is an awareness there, so I can make that choice, like what is real, what is not real. Like, have you seen the like Peter in the Hunger Games, and he just constantly keeps asking, is this real or is this unreal? So it's the same thing. I just have to remind myself, is this real or is this, unreal, the past, and it's not hard. I know I know the trauma reaction belongs in the past, and it was in the past, but I don't have to carry that with me anymore. So it is possible to heal PTSD, but it's also important to accept it, that it's a real condition, that it does affect, and it's just something that you can only work on step by step, episode by episode, and then you can combine it with psychological processing. All right, that's all I want to say about PTSD for today. I hope it might help others in some way or another.